Get the home field advantage every time with Fairfield by Marriott, official hotel partner of the NCAA. Whether you're a student athlete working toward your championship dreams or your team's biggest fan, Fairfield by Marriott has everything you need to get ready for game day. From comfortable guest rooms to complimentary hot breakfast, Fairfield is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotels and official hotel partner of the NCAA. Visit fairfield.marriott.com to book your next game day stay.
Welcome into The Verge, a show which covers the Baltimore Orioles minor leagues. The Verge is part of BSL Radio. Baltimore Sports and Life is dedicated to analysis and discussion on the Orioles, Baltimore Ravens, and the University of Maryland. The site has a team of writers providing coverage of those teams and houses live streaming content weekly. Join the conversations at the message board, like BSL on Facebook, and follow BSL on Twitter.
And now a word from our new sponsor, Birdland Sports. Baseball season is finally here. And what better way to celebrate than with some fresh gear from Birdland Sports? As a small business run by Orioles fans, Birdland Sports offers a great selection of unofficial merchandise, including unique designs like Verge or Coming tees, player cartoon shirts, and World Series prediction designs. And the best part? Their prices are more affordable than the big guys. Get high-quality gear without breaking the bank. So whether you're heading to the ballpark or watching from home, show your love for the Orioles with Birdland Sports. Visit birdlandsports.com today to browse their collection and gear up for the season. Let's go O's.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts and Q&A lets us be more creative on another level. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to dive into Orioles spring training and gear up for the regular season with Andy Kostka from the Baltimore Banner. And we'll get started with the interview in just a moment. But first, we're excited to announce a new initiative for the 2023 season that we think our patrons are going to enjoy. And I'll turn that over to Bob to discuss the specifics.
Yeah, so we've been thinking about how we're going to start covering the major leagues more, since all these guys we followed up through the system the past 2 or 3 years now have kind of arrived, and we want to, as the team is good, we want to be along for that ride as well. So I think every weekend now we will have a bonus podcast, a Major League Mailbag, so to speak, where one of us will rotate each week and we will answer listener questions and just talk about what's going on that week at the Major League level. And it will be exclusively an early look for patrons. We'll release it first to patrons, and then a day or two later we'll put it on the main feed. So if you want to be a part of that, sign up for our Patreon.
And sign up for as little as $3 a month right now. And at our $5 and $10 levels, you will get bonus daily content, not just the Major League Mailbag segment, which will start this weekend, but daily recaps throughout the regular season. So be sure to check that out now. And while Brent introduced tonight's guest, he is a beat writer over at the Baltimore Banner covering the Orioles. He is Andy Kostka. Andy, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, and first off, you've been on our show before. You've actually had a couple of appearances before this, but this is the first time we've had you on since you joined the Banner. So congrats, and how's that new assignment going?
Oh, it's great. I definitely encourage people to become patrons with you guys. But if they have an extra $1 sitting around after subscribing to you guys, 6 months for $1 of the Banner, you can read all of my stuff and other Orioles content we have coming up down the pipeline. So recommend it if you have the opportunity.
We co-sign that.
Yeah. I just have to say the vibe of this show does feel a little bit different though, because you're not at Camden Yards in the press box this time, which was one of my favorite episodes to go back and listen to. The ambiance was top notch.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of our listeners realize that there is actually a PA system inside the press box until they heard that episode. I'm going to start off with this, which is it feels like it's a different season than we've seen in the Michael Elias regime. Young team with a lot of prospects arriving, a lot of good young players on this roster, coming off a unexpected winning season. So what is the vibe like in camp this year?
Yeah, I think there's this it's kind of a two-edged sword where people have high expectations for what the Orioles can do inside the clubhouse. O's players, they are confident in what they managed last season, and they feel like they can back that up with another winning campaign and a push to the playoffs. And the amount of postseason talk is something we haven't heard. I've only covered the team. This is my second full season, so I obviously haven't had the experience. But just from people beyond, talking about the postseason this openly is a new thing in Baltimore. And but the other side of that is there's an acknowledgement that March 30th, when that comes around, the record is 0-0, and they haven't done anything yet. And so there's hope and excitement and expectations, but they have to live up to them. And there's every possibility that some of the magic, so to speak, if you want to use that term, that came last year to give an above 500 record. We'll see if that kind of can translate to 2023. Especially, you look at some of the bullpen arms last year, a lot of them performed at the 95th percentile of what they were expected to. And that's tough to have for an entire season again. So we'll kind of see if lightning strikes twice. The players, a full season of Adley, a full season of Gunnar, you think, there'll be a natural step forward. These guys, Kyle Stowers, full season, you figure guys will take steps forward, but I'll believe it kind of when we see it, and when we see just kind of how this team gels in the regular season will be, that'll be the true telling point. But at least, to answer your actual question, at least early in camp, a lot of excitement, a lot of postseason talk.
I think you just started something. Let's call it Orioles magic. I've never heard that anywhere else.
We're only a couple of days away from opening day now, so you've had a long look at these guys over spring training. And looking at this question now, I can tell who wrote this one before. Every year we say, spring training doesn't mean anything as far as the stat line goes, and we were kind of talking about this before the show started. But as far as indicator for regular season success, yet every year we see people overanalyze the spring training results. So where are you at on spring training from Brian Baker's going to be just fine to trade Gunnar Henderson while you still can?
I think baseball is such a large sample size sport, and these guys have 30 at bats, if that. Anyone at any point of the season can have a 2 for 30 stretch, and anyone can have a 15 for 30 stretch. It happens. And I really think at this point, no results are worth overanalyzing. Gunnar Henderson is fine, and he hit a home run today. He had a triple on Friday. He had a walk in a single on Saturday, or whatever day it was. I think it was Saturday. He's going to be fine. Maybe it was Sunday at the walk. I'm missing my days up a little bit, but he's going to be fine. The wrist is healed. He missed some time early in camp, just didn't see live ABs, and was thrown into games to get ready without live ABs before that, which naturally is going to be a little bit of trial and error there when you haven't seen live pitching in that setting since October of the previous year. But he will be fine. Brian Baker will be fine. I think I have the tendency sometimes too of like looking at, you look at like early Joey Crable stats, 8 runs in 2 outings for him. And I was hitting, the panic button about like, what's going on with Joey Crable? And now he's, 4 scoreless innings since then. Maybe he still doesn't make the opening day roster just with how competitive the bullpen is. It's entirely possible he's kind of an odd man out in that situation. But I think there's oftentimes like spring training is a time for guys to try things out. Kyle Gibson messed with his delivery, yesterday, and it worked great. Today, Kyle Bradish messed with where he started his hands, and he didn't like it. It didn't go well. He gave us some runs. That's what this is for. It's this is the time to try things out, and if it doesn't work, okay, back to the drawing board or go back to what had worked before then. If it works, phenomenal, and you feel better going into the season. So I don't think there's anything like really to worry about. It's so early in camp, and there'll be stretches of the season in which Gunnar Henderson will slump. And, that happens to Mike Trout. It happens to Kelvin Gutierrez. It happens to every player on every spectrum. Yeah, maybe a little bit more for one than the other, but, all players on high and low do that. So,
yeah. And when it comes to the pitching staff, it feels like there's only just one or two spots available. I mean, Cole Irvin, Kyle Gibson, Dean Kramer, Kyle Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez, in some order. Seems like it's going to be the rotation. Then you got Felix Bautista, Perez, Aiken, Tyler Wells, Austin Voth, Michael Givens seem like locks for the bullpen. Maybe Brian Baker. But after that, you have DL Hall, Mike Baumann, Andrew Politi, Joey Crable. Who do you see filling out the bullpen to start the year?
Yeah, I have a story coming out tomorrow morning with my official roster projection for opening day. But people can have a sneak peek right now. I have Andrew Politi making the opening day roster, not necessarily, lasting the entire 2023 season. I mean, we've seen that before in 2021 with Ben McDonald's nephew, was given back to the Reds after like 10 innings, 17 innings, something like that. Didn't exactly work out the way they had hoped. So it's entirely possible that Politi, comes in and doesn't have a great start to the year, and they decide that a change needs to happen, and then you're kind of out of luck there. But he's been good in camp. One outing was troublesome. 2 home runs in that one outing. I think four earned runs, but 6 scoreless outings beyond that. And you give him an opportunity. I mean, there's a reason they picked him up in the Rule 5 draft. They believed in what he had. And you have a little bit of flexibility with a guy like Crable. You can option him to start the season. It's tough just based on, such a great first half last year. But when you look at his latter half in August until September, into late September, he was a different pitcher. Obviously just ran into some trouble there. He's found his rhythm in camp again. So it feels harsh, but it's a tough. There's not many spots open, and I would say Baker's a lock. I know he was kind of a bubble for you, but I think he's a lock. DL Hall, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he made the opening day roster as a bullpen arm. Definitely not as a starter, just because he's not built up to be a starter yet with a back injury that kind of slowed his progression down. But I kind of think he has more long-term value as a starter, and so I wouldn't be shocked if he starts in AAA. As a starting pitcher and kind of builds up more in that sense. And who else was on there? Mike Baumann. He's been great out of the bullpen the last 2 outings. He's developing a sweeper. I have a story coming out soon about a sweeper and why he added it. It really it pairs well with. He has a slider that's really more like a cutter. It's really, really tight. And the sweeper off of that is a very deceptive pitch, when he tunnels it well. So I think, you'd like a lot of what Baumann has, but I just don't know if he's going to break through into that opening day bullpen. So we'll see. But I think Politi kind of gets the nod at the beginning, and then you see, what can he do? Can you strike gold in the Rule 5 draft like they have before? It's worked in the past. Sometimes it hasn't worked, sometimes it has. And and we'll see exactly what happens. But I think he will probably get the nod purely because there's less flexibility with him. That they have to kind of have him on that 26 man.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of DL Hall, he had his first appearance today, 1 2/3. Seemed like his command looked pretty good, at least from what I heard. I was out and about when he came into the game, but did you hear anything about how he felt or looked following that? I know you weren't at the game today, but have you heard anything?
Yeah, I was on a beautiful hike at Robinson Preserve along Tampa Bay. So I can tell you more about the birds I saw than DL Hall, but what I looked was he was good. Touched 95 miles per hour with a fastball, which is promising. Had some strikeouts in there. I'll have to. I unfortunately don't have a better analysis than that, just because I was not at the stadium today. But yeah, I mean, from all accounts, I know Jacob Calvin-Meyer from the Sun. He wrote a story on it and said he looked real good. So check out that Sun story if you're really interested in what DL did today.
So you might have just touched on this with Andrew Politi, but do you see any surprises on the 26-man opening day roster aside from that?
Spoil your whole article right here. Right?
I honestly, maybe it's maybe more of a surprise is that I don't see any of the backup first baseman options making it. And I remember I've talked with Bob before about this, that it's an interesting competition, and we've all, I think, been guilty of like playing up this competition about like backup first base, and we've written a lot of stories about it. But at the end of the day, I think the O's are, and I could be entirely wrong. Like, in 1 week, people can quote this and be like, wow, Andy doesn't know anything. But I think the O's are comfortable with the idea of McCann playing a little bit of backup first base, Anthony Santander playing backup first base, and Vavra, even if you need him to, playing backup first base. Again, Mountcastle is going to take most of the games there. He's really, he'll play the vast majority of his games at first base. So you're only looking at like 40 games that you need to have a another option there, which maybe you feel comfortable once a week, having Santander play there and McCann play there another day a week. That could be enough to keep Mountcastle pretty healthy and in a good spot. So I wouldn't be surprised if, even with, how Franchy Cordero has batted really well this offseason, or not this offseason, sorry, this spring training. Ryan O'Hearn, before that knee injury, batted really well. He's getting, just getting kind of his rhythm back, but even now his at-bats have looked pretty good since his return from the knee injury. I think both of those guys would be great depth options. It's entirely possible with Cordero that he opts out of his contract if he's tried attempt to send down to AAA. He might look for an opportunity elsewhere, but O'Hearn has an option, so you can stash him in AAA. And I think you'll feel pretty good about the depth that he has. If there is an injury, he can play corner outfield and first base, and you feel pretty good about that. Of course, they just optioned Lewin Diaz today. Or I guess reassigned would be the correct term. But, so they have him as a depth option. We'll see exactly how it all plays out. But I think maybe that is the surprise that, they don't necessarily have a stereotypical backup first baseman. I also I know people have been somewhat down on Ryan McKenna, just as, it is his place, up, in jeopardy. I see him making that opening day roster. I think he adds a lot defensively in those 3 outfield spots. Plus, just from a standpoint of, if Cedric Mullins, he worked a lot on left matchups, but if Cedric Mullins runs into issues left on left, Ryan Mountcastle hit 271 against left-handed pitchers last year. So you feel really good about him playing center field against a left-handed pitcher. If Mullins needs a day off, or if they just decide maybe his batting against left on left isn't exactly where they want it, you feel pretty confident with McKenna in there. So I do think McKenna makes the team on opening day. That I don't have any juicy things for you. I honestly don't think we'll see a Cowser immediately. I mean, he's played great this spring, but I think probably AAA to begin, and then you'll see him at some point this year. But in terms of a lot of the prospects, I don't necessarily see some of the hotter picks, the guys that are a little bit, on the outskirts making that opening day roster. But we'll see. I've been wrong many times in my life, so I'll be ready for it again.
No Heston Kjerstad opening day, right field?
No, no, and I think he needs another. I mean, obviously, we all know his history. He would need a little bit more time. But he, speaking of Heston, phenomenal power and really has been very impressive this year, this spring. So we'll see him at some point. If it's later this summer or not, who knows? But at some point, we'll see him.
Yes. Well, let's talk about a prospect who seems like a lock to make the opening day roster, Grayson Rodriguez. And last two outings, he's looked sharp early on. Looked like Grayson Rodriguez that we know so well. But then struggles kind of hit him in the fourth inning or so. Do you think that's a sign of something that he really needs to work on as he adjusts to the majors, or is that just a blip on the radar?
I think it's kind of a blip on the radar. I know he was dealing with a headache against the Red Sox that got worse as the game went on. So that kind of like factored into it a little bit. He didn't want to make that an excuse, of course, but that's potentially something there. Brandon Hyde said he got a little fatigued in that fourth inning. Just seemed like the fatigue maybe. We'll see if that is a thing that kind of happens, a little bit more frequently. I don't think it should be an issue. We've seen him work deep into games in the minor leagues before and has not had an issue with fatigue. It could just be an early spring thing. I think it's just a blip on the map, and they're pretty confident that they being Hyde and Grayson, that this is a good learning opportunity for him. I think more of it was, I look at it like maybe second time through the order. Teams are picking up on something, against the Red Sox, and that's a good lineup that he faced. Adam Duvall with the homer. I think it was Devers had a double off him. There was a liner. I forget who hit the liner for the first out of that third inning, but that was a rocket shot right at the shortstop. That was an out, but I think it came off the bat, incredibly hard. So those are three hard contact right out, of the top of the order for the second time through the batting order. Maybe there's something there that we're going to see a little bit more frequently, where he's going to have to learn how to, just alter something, going forward. But I don't think he's concerned. I don't think the Orioles are concerned, and I do think he will make the opening day roster. It would be, I guess, you could use it as an excuse, right? If you were the front office being like, we do want to make sure that the fourth inning isn't an issue going forward. It would make sense as a lot, logical, if you'd like to have him in AAA for a little bit, but I don't think he really has much to prove in the minors, as we've all seen it. And I think he will do more for this team in Baltimore.
Yeah. How do you see the Orioles, let's say he makes the opening day roster, how do you see the Orioles kind of managing his innings this season? Any sense into that, or any guesses what we could look for there?
Yeah, that's a player by player. We kind of asked Elias right before spring training. We went down for spring training. We talked with Elias about pitch counts and what we might expect from a guy like Grayson and some other players. And he said it's really kind of like player by player. They don't necessarily have like an exact he's throwing 100 innings and that's it. They'll monitor throughout the year how he's doing. I wouldn't be surprised, when John Means gets back into the mix, if John Means is a late inning or a late season addition. Maybe they do piggybacking between John Means for 2 innings, Grayson for a couple innings. Yeah, who knows what's possible? Maybe they decide DL can piggyback with Grayson after 4 innings of Grayson. Maybe that's the way they go later in the summer. A lot of ways they can do it, but they definitely, I think they'll be very cognizant. I mean, Grayson has a very bright future, and they're not going to be willing to put him in any harm's way, by forcing him to go deeper into games or deeper into the season. I know he wants no restrictions. He's a very competitive guy, but the O's will be very cognizant of what that pitch count will be.
Yeah, I've been drooling about a Grayson DL tandem ever since I thought of that a few weeks ago. But Orioles fans are not drooling over Kyle Gibson and Cole Irvin when they signed them and traded for them over the offseason. But Gibson has pitched really good this spring, and he was tinkering with stuff, and still he's been lights out. And then Irvin quickly endeared himself to fans. Seems like a pretty easygoing guy that fans should enjoy watching, and he's also pitched pretty good. What impact have they had in camp so far?
Yeah, I think what interests me about both of them is that they're both using the new PitchCom system. On Irvin has it on his belt. Gibson has it on his glove. It kind of helps with just the learning curve for McCann. Already knew Gibson really well. He had faced him so much in his career that he knew his arsenal really well. But for Rushman, who has not catch these guys ever, it helps especially in the spring, just learning what sequencing they like to do against certain batters and in certain counts. That has been interesting. Just they're very willing to kind of offer their insight to other pitchers and to catchers in game or out of games. And I definitely don't think it's an accident that Cal Gibson's locker is right next to Grayson Rodriguez's locker. That is on purpose. And Gibson is that veteran presence that they really like, and he's pitched phenomenally well this spring. 14 innings and no walks and 2 runs against him. That's it. I would be surprised if he wasn't the opening day starter. I know everyone loves to talk about opening day starter. It kind of doesn't really matter who takes the ball on opening day, because a week later we forget about it and everyone's just in their rotation. But I think the honor probably will go to him, just being the veteran of the group and with how strong he has been this spring. His changeup looked phenomenally well last time out, and I think when that's going well, it really helps with making his fastball seem that has a little bit extra hop on it when it's not what it was, but when he compare those two together, it's really promising. So far, so far I think they've been both good additions, both locks for the rotation. Cole Irvin especially is just really fascinating to talk to and listen to. He knows a lot about different pitches and sequencing, and sometimes he will try to throw innings sometimes where he only uses his 4-seam and 2-seam fastball in an entire first inning, just to see if he can go inside and out on guys. And if he can establish just those 2 pitches in the first inning, it unlocks everything after that. Which I always find, he hasn't done it yet this spring, but he's done it a couple of times in his career in the major leagues, where he's successfully done a first inning only throwing 2-seam and 4-seam, which that 2-seam is really like a sinker, but calls it a 2-seam. But just kind of a fascinating guy that you can plan that thing out and do it in a game. But yeah, I think maybe not the flashiest signings or in trade this offseason, but they definitely add a lot to this pitching staff.
Yeah, one interview during actually one of the rare Masson broadcasts, what interview with Cole Irvin, I'm like, this guy could be an announcer one day. He's just got the gift of gab, or whatever you want to call it.
With Adley Rutschman, we saw the difference that he made pretty much from day one last year in terms of how the team performed, how the pitching staff performed with him behind the plate versus when Robinson Chirinos was back there. And the fact that he missed as much time as he did, yet had a 5-win season, got close to winning American League Rookie of the Year, says a lot about the way he played. What kind of difference do you think he can make being on the roster for the full season, as opposed to not being on the team until mid-May like he was last year?
Defensively, starting with that, best blocking catcher in baseball. Terrific pitch framer. People in the O's clubhouse loved Robinson Chirinos, and for very good reason. Great veteran presence. Really understood what it was like to play for a team competing for something. And I think that was incredibly valuable to have his voice in the clubhouse when suddenly the O's were competing for something, to have his perspective. But, he was a shortstop growing up. He was not a natural catcher. And you could kind of see it with some of his pitch framing wasn't always as precise as Adley, who is a very refined defensive catcher. He could have defensively probably could have played in the majors the day he got drafted. Just had to develop offensively. Not that he wasn't already good offensively, but I think. And then you add offensively the other side of the coin, and we've seen it. He feels like it's funny, throughout his career, it wasn't necessarily this way, but last year he was better from the left side of the plate against righties than from the right side of the plate against lefties. And generally it wasn't that way. It was either pretty split or inverse of that. But this offseason really worked on being adjustable at the plate, can go from both sides. And his right-handed swing, he says, feels better than ever, and looks great. We'll see, what that looks like come actual season. But you figure a very, very strong offensive capabilities for Adley, and then you add on top his elite defense, and you got to love what you have behind the plate if you're Baltimore.
What kind of work has he been doing at the plate this offseason? Because if you really had to nitpick something last year with Rutzman, it would be how he hit as a right-handed hitter against left-handed pitching. So what has he been doing to try to improve in that area?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the main thing he did work on. I forget the exact adjustments. A lot of them were pretty minute. A lot of it was reps against a righty or against a lefty as a righty. We'll see exactly what it is. I don't have for you, like off the top of my head, exactly what he changed. I think I wrote a story on Adley early this season about his off season in Oregon. So shameless plug, if people look up the Banner feature on Adley, there probably is more info in there, but my head's been swimming with 40 different guys. But definitely, I think, the nitpick would be what he did as a right-handed batter last year. And he knew that, he's focused on becoming, both sides of the plate, his splits not being as extreme as they were last year.
Gotta love the intangibles too. I mean, seems like his interview skills on those social media tweets from the Orioles official account are pretty funny, and just seems like he's already taken over a leadership role. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think definitely, is already a leader in that clubhouse. It is interesting, just the way you'll see him in the clubhouse. After a guy pitches or before he pitches, you'll see him at his locker just picking their brain about what they want to do. It's not that that's necessarily unique for catchers. Catchers do it all the time, but he seems to really have a strong idea of what makes every pitcher basically the best they can be, and he tries to maximize that. And I know saw him with Kyle Gibson this morning, really talking over his yesterday start. He's definitely a leader in the clubhouse, and sometimes I wish there were fewer cliches in his answers to us, but definitely on the social media stuff. He's great with.
Yeah, they've coached him well in many aspects of his career. I got one more question about a major league guy here, Austin Hayes. What's your opinion about him? Because I know last time you were on, you convinced me about Jorge Mateo. You made me a bit of a fan. I was kind of down on him, and it turned me around a little bit. Austin Hayes, though, I need you to turn me around on Austin Hayes. He last year finally had a career high in games played, like 145 or so games. But we know first half Austin Hayes versus second half Austin Hayes were kind of two different people. But now he's one of the hottest hitters in spring camp. Is there something that stood out to you this spring that makes you believe like 2023 is the year it all comes together for him?
Yeah, Austin Hayes is not a guy who makes changes to his swing usually throughout his career. And this offseason, he made swing changes. if you want like exact details on that, you're gonna have to wait for John Mioli to write his story about the exact swing changes. Hopefully he will write it for a publication, if not his own, at some point soon. But that he has made swing changes, not complete overhaul or anything like that, but he looks good at the plate. And last year, talking to him, and the thing he was most proud of was that he never landed on the injured list. He did miss time. I think it was, he had the hand injury that was the one. I know he had soreness, I think of the oblique or something like that. Missed a couple of games here or there. What wasn't injured, injured list level. That's what, he definitely wants availability to be a big part of his game. But yeah, I think a lot of it will have to be, can he maintain? He doesn't even need first half Austin Hayes, just like median Austin Hayes for a full season is going to be the biggest question. And, so far in camp, he's been great, but it is 30 at bats or whatever, 30, maybe a little higher for him because he's played so much, but 40 at bats or whatever it is that he's hitting great. We'll see it on a larger sample size, but it's been very encouraging to start. And, you'll read more about the swing changes from John Mioli, but the fact that he has tinkered a little bit and has a quicker, less, a little bit more direct to the baseball, not going around, going direct to it, has been a big help.
All right, I'm asking you this question because I know you know the answer, and I know you can correct it. You can get this done. Why doesn't Ed Smith have pitch speeds or StatCast data available? Is that like a secrecy thing with the organization, or is that's just how it's been and they haven't changed it?
I actually wish I had the answer to you. My guess is that it's secrecy. Because they have TrackMan, for all their, the internal metrics are there. They study this stuff, every day. It's just, I would love. They do have a stadium radar gun. Actually, it only works about 50% of the time, but it is kind of blurry on the scoreboard, like a mile away in center field. So you can see speeds every once in a while. But I would love it if they got. If we had StatCast going there to better analyze these guys. But it makes kind of the away games fun because you do get StatCast. So I guess double-edged sword there. But I do conspiracy theory on my end. Part of me always wonders, like, I think the O's just like, hey, let's keep this, what our guys are doing internal. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I like the silver lining though. Yeah, makes the road games fun.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Based on his comments publicly this spring, it seems like Brandon Hyde really enjoys playing these young players. These guys are probably ticketed for Bowie or Norfolk this year, or in Jackson Holliday's case, A-ball. And he's putting them in challenging situations. So just from what you have seen this spring, who do you think in that group has stood out to Brandon Hyde and his staff and has probably done the most to improve their chances for Major League time this season?
Absolutely, Heston Kjerstad. I asked Brandon the other day, who's kind of surprised him, and didn't even need to think. Heston Kjerstad surprised him the most, just with the power. Even defensively, he made a couple nice. I don't know if it was on TV, but I think it was Sunday. Made a couple nice sliding catches. Just short on one, but made at least two sliding catches on balls shallow in left field. But Heston has very much impressed, and I think he's impressed just about everyone in camp, because if you kind of think about it, he hasn't been around this group as much as, like a lot of these guys have been together for so long, and Heston has battled the injuries and the heart condition, so wasn't necessarily there from exactly when he was drafted. So I think he's burst onto the scene and suddenly, Hyde definitely realizes how phenomenal of a hitter Heston is and what kind of bright future there is there. And I think his teammates have taken notice too.
Yes. Well, to follow up on that question from one of our patrons, Ben Dewars, he wants to ask, how quickly do you think the Orioles plan on moving with Kjerstad? You think it'd be kind of status quo with him, or because he's had such a good spring and because he's impressed the head guy and Brandon Hyde so much, maybe he's fast-tracked a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think I would be surprised if he was fast-tracked. Just, he's very mature. His age is right there alongside, Stowers and Rushman. He's basically in that group of guys. Just we haven't seen him as much just because of what he's had to go through. But I think definitely what he's done this spring, and again, sample size is everything. Small sample size, but we'll see what he can do in the minor leagues early, and if he can continue it. I would honestly not be entirely shocked if he ended up in the majors this year, but that's pure, conjecture on my part. I think Kowser's way closer, and would be the most likely option. If any of the outfield prospects will break through, it will be Kowser, but Heston has absolutely, impressed, and definitely a fast track candidate along with Holiday. I mean, Holiday, I think is a guy that, I don't think he will end the year in high A. I think really double A would be the logical end year, and probably start there next year and end up at triple A. Maybe even faster. So we'll see exactly what happens with him. But as a 19-year-old, pretty impressive what he was able to do this spring.
Another guy that's been hitting pretty well and impressing is had a nice triple today, exit velocity over 100 miles per hour. Jordan Westberg seems likely to go back to Norfolk, but he is making that decision a little bit harder for the Orioles as the spring is going on. What do you think needs to happen for him to get Major League time this year? And a follow-up from a listener also wants to know, do you have any insight how the front office views Westberg?
I'll answer the first part first. And I think an injury would have to happen for him to get Major League time. It's a super crowded infield. They did not sign Adam Frazier for $8 million to not play him and have him be a big part of the team. And I think he's going to be there. Ramon will be there. Gunnar will be there, and Mateo will be there. So those are four guys that are probably going to be in the lineup every day. One of them maybe as a DH on the bench, whatever it is. But you're going to rotate those four guys, and you have Taron Vavra, who great spring, defensive versatility. Has been even better this offseason because he added third base, a little bit of first base in there too. He hasn't played it in the game, but third base has played a lot in the game. So I think it will be a challenge for Westberg to probably break through immediately. As for insight on the front office, I think they definitely like what he's been able to do, but if I had to guess a little bit, he'd probably be one of the guys you would trade if you wanted a major league talent coming back, because he is Major League ready, and he's at a position where you have a Jackson Holiday coming up behind him. You probably feel like Gunnar Henderson is going to be here for the long term. Maybe you feel like you can't trade a Jordan Westberg, and it would be painful for the front office when Jordan Westberg is an all-star somewhere. But that's kind of the price of business, and it's why they built a farm system that is this strong. And not saying that he would be traded, not saying that they've shopped him around, but that just would be kind of the the same could be said for a Jory Ortiz. A lot of those guys, that Connor Norby, a lot of the guys in that ilk, could be trade candidates. But definitely impressive this spring. And if there's an injury, I think he'd be one of the first guys they would want to call up from Norfolk.
All right. Out of all the minor league signings that the Orioles made this offseason, who will make the biggest impact for the team in 2023, and why do you think it's Edward Bizzardo?
I was gonna say it's Reed Garrett or Edward Bizzardo. I'm not even kidding. I think bullpen, so much random things happen in bullpens, be an injury or somebody just has a really difficult stretch, and you need a change of pace in the bullpen. I like what both of those guys bring with sinkers, splitters. The split for Reed Garrett has looked great. Something he developed in Japan when he was over there. And they both have fastballs in mid to upper 90s. Upper would be exaggerating. I think mid, 95, 96 at most. But I think the arsenals have been good. A little up and down in spring so far, but I like to imagine that they will see time in the major leagues this season. Bullpen moves around a lot, during the year, and you never know which one of them might end up sticking and being a dude at some point during the year. But those two guys are under the radar picks for me.
When you look at this team at the onset of the season, it feels like there's kind of some conflicting thoughts, at least among fans, because on one hand, they had that surprising year last year. They have a really strong young core coming back. But at the same time, the Orioles didn't do a lot this offseason to add to the Major League roster. Maybe didn't get that major piece that I think some fans really thought they were going to get or were hoping they were going to get. So now that we're kind of moving past the noise of the offseason a little bit, getting into the regular season, what do you think are realistic expectations for this team?
I know expectations externally are very high. Playoffs, I think it would be finishing above 500 would be, for me, the natural progression, kind of maintaining the progress from last year and making sure the team doesn't take a step backward. You don't want like a 2-step forward, 1-step back situation where last year was the 2-step forward just because of how big of an improvement it was. You don't want this to be a 1-step back. So that would, I think, be the natural thing for me. Just looking at what they did this offseason, you figure you have a full season of some of the prospects like, Gunnar, Adley. That has to be a benefit. You mentioned earlier how different the season was when Adley arrived in May. You take what they did in May to October, and that's a team that probably makes the playoffs if you extend it over over the entire season, if you average it out. So I think you like the full season of those guys, a full season of Grayson, hopefully, depending on pitch count. But I just think the main focus honestly has to be not taking a step back. And a wild card would be a plus. They want to make the postseason. I don't see a pennant in the future, but last year was surprising, so we'll see. But hopefully that answered your question. I think I lost you like in the middle there, but I zoned out for half a second. But I think just kind of maintaining and maybe even a step forward. 85 wins, I think, would be a good place to be, even though it might not be exactly where some fans would dream of being, but 85 wins would be a big accomplishment in my opinion.
Honestly, that's a good point I didn't really think about until you said it. That this whole offseason, it seems like their whole point was to not take a step back. Like, you got a bunch of high floor, maybe not high ceiling acquisitions and just trying to, keep the status quo. So, instead of pulling a Tigers where they go out and sign all these big guys and then it kind of falls out from under them the year before. So, yeah, there was something there, even if you lost the plot.
It's late for me. It's past bedtime.
We'll kind of wrap up here. We do have 3 more questions here from patrons. I wanted to ask you, Tim Cheney, shout out to Tim. We kind of talked about Franchy a little bit, but he was really interested in knowing what odds do you give Franchy Cordero on making this roster? And if he does, who would be impacted?
That's a great question. Good job, Tim. I think he's hitting well enough. I think the thing that lets him down is his defense. He's not a plus defender, definitely not a plus defender in the outfield. They've tried him a little bit out there, just the flexibility. First base, even I haven't seen enough of Santander, but I'd almost think that Santander has higher upside at first base defense. So that I think that's the one knock against Franchi. But you love what the bat has been doing. The exit velo from him is unreal. He hits balls hard, even if it's at a guy. He's consistently this spring it's been very loud outs, if not loud hits. To answer his question, I think I'm not good at putting a percentage on something. I think it's, I think he has an outside chance of making the roster. I think if he did make the opening day roster, it would impact a guy like Ryan McKenna. You might see them deciding. We've seen a lot of Austin Hayes in center field, and obviously that's because Cedric Mullins is at the WBC. But I think they're very comfortable with what Hayes can do in center. We've even seen once Kyle Stowers in center, and if Stowers can be a center fielder, that's another positive. And Taron Valver played a lot of center when he first was traded over from the Rockies. If you remember, hasn't played it since in the majors or anything like that. But when he was first traded, really was a second baseman and center fielder for in the O system. So I think he has a capability to play out there as well. Hasn't played this spring, but has the capabilities to do it. So I think McKenna might, if Franchi were to make it, McKenna might be an odd man out. And you do like Franchi as a designated hitter potentially on some days when you don't have Rushman DHing or Santander DHing, or I guess Adam Frazier DHing if you really want him in the lineup when you have the other three guys in for the rest of the infield. I feel like it'd be intriguing, but I will stick to my original projection that they're gonna attempt to put him in AAA and see if he sticks.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that as well. David Adams would like to know, do you have any sense of who the Orioles may be interested in trading? Do you think there is a trade market for Jorge Mateo, Ramon Urias, or Austin Hayes? And do you think the front office is wanting to make a trade to clear out some of the log jams that we have on the roster?
I think there's interest from other teams in all three of those players. There's not many times you can get a player as electric as Jorge Mateo, who can play, he's a shortstop, but we saw with the Padres, can play all over the field. Hasn't had to do that here, but, definitely could be a thing he does, for another team in the future, or even for the O's, if he ends up being more of a bench piece in the future, it could be a kind of utility bench man. But yeah, no, I think all three technically would have interest from teams. I think right now the O's will stand pat. Look at my phone and see in 2 minutes they'll announce a trade because I just said that. But I don't see anything imminent. But definitely this offseason, there was interest for those three. Nothing like that actually came to fruition, obviously, but nothing that came close. And I guess I at some point would see a trade to kind of clear a logjam. I don't think that point is right now. I think maybe next offseason, before an arbitration deadline, you might see one of these guys traded. One of these guys being like one of the starting outfielders, a Hayes. I don't see Mullins, but maybe even Santander, which I really don't see Santander being traded, but you never know with, when a guy gets to that point, they might trade just to free up a space for a Kauser or a Heston Kjerstad or Jordan Westberg in the infield, trade somebody. But definitely it's a possibility. I don't see it at this point. I think you'd have to probably wait till the next offseason for one of those trades that would kind of clear a spot for a younger guy.
I will say before we get to our last question, the Orioles do have a knack for announcing major news at a very inconvenient time.
Yeah.
So it's 9:55 right now, Eastern on Monday night. They'll announce something at 10:48 p.m.
I'll be fast asleep.
Yeah, we'll have to wait until next week to discuss it here, and you'll have to get some from the Banner tomorrow morning. But Ben Dewars has a question about the backup first base battle. And I know we've kind of touched on this already, but how do you see that shaking out? It looks like you see all three of those guys, Diaz, O'Hearn, Cordero not making the opening day roster. But if you had to guess right now, are all three of them in Norfolk? Is it just two of the three? How does that play out?
Diaz will be in Norfolk, most likely. O'Hearn has the option, which makes him a little bit easier to send down to start the season in Norfolk. Cordero, we'll see if what shakes out there. He might end up in Norfolk. That'd be a really crowded Norfolk.
Josh Lester too.
Josh Lester. Maybe you trade one of them to free up. Before spring training ends, maybe you trade one of them. All of them have performed well, so I wouldn't be shocked if there's a market out there to get a reliever or something back that you feel like has a high upside in that sense. I think they have enough trust in Mountcastle to be an everyday first baseman and his durability to kind of deal with that. And then they believe that the DH role can be a lot of different guys depending on who needs a break in the infield. It could be Stowers or Santander in the outfield. It could be Austin Hayes, DHing a day. I think they're probably pretty comfortable with the DH not being a set guy and being instead more of a rotating role that gives a guy a day off his feet a little bit in the field, which limits, what a Cordero would do on the opening day roster, I think. But I've been wrong so many times before, so I entirely I'm very aware that I could be wrong. But I think I would right now see it as they don't make the opening day roster, and they'd probably try to stuff them all in Norfolk, if not trade one of them for a piece that maybe ends up in Norfolk, as a reliever, but they a high upside reliever, you never know. With team control, a lot of options left would be something they'd probably look for. I hope that answered his question.
That's good.
Cool.
Good insight as always, Andy. And I know you've kind of teased out some articles that you have coming up on the Banner here, but before you go, give our listeners a sense of what you'll be writing coming up for the Banner and what they could get by following the Orioles in the Banner this season. Yeah,
well, I think in the next 8 days or so, I have a story on Colton Cowser and his hijinks in the clubhouse, but also how that looseness helps him play at a high level. I have a story on Heston Kjerstad about his Arizona Fall League and what he's done this spring to kind of impress everybody, with some insight from him about what he worked on in Arkansas this offseason, what it meant to be back in playing in the Arizona Fall League and kind of getting where baseball was an everyday thing for him again. Those are probably two big ones. Then we'll have some season preview content, and once opening day arrives, we'll have a lot of stuff like that, and won't give everything away, but yeah, hopefully you guys subscribe. That'd be great. I mean, it would help me out if you wanted to. That'd be awesome. Maybe if you find loose change, give it to the Banner. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, definitely check out the Baltimore Banner. Orioles coverage, and the scan is required reading for me every morning in my inbox. I always appreciate that. So, Andy, thank you so much for your time tonight. Yeah, of course. I appreciate you guys as always. Yeah. We will be back next week with Connor Newcomb, the host of Locked On Orioles, to make our regular season predictions. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, continue to follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. We'll have all the latest Orioles coverage there every day. And check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com as well. There's March Madness coverage going on over there, as well as NFL off-season talk, and, of course, Orioles spring training coverage. While you're on the site, be sure to hop on the message board and join and discuss with fellow readers of the site, as well as contributors to BSL. We will have our first Major League Mailbag out this weekend to patrons first, and then out on our main feed before next Monday. So thank you to Andy Kostka for his appearance tonight. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden, and you've been listening to On the Verge.
That'll do it for this week's episode of On the Verge. Be sure to check out our Patreon page where you can help show your support for the show and get bonus content, including monthly top 50 updates to our prospect list and daily game recaps during the season, and much, much more.